But in this now that Bill Thompson has won this, he can tell Ann Taylor, look, you know, we don't have to come to you with with anything now. We're sitting there. We have all the cards. You've got none. We're in the power seat right here. You know, and your client isn't a merciful client that where there's any sympathy. If he killed maybe, I don't mean to be, you just think about it. If he killed 2 people, that's a multiple killing. There might be a little bit of leeway, you know, justice demands. He could be given the death penalty or life behind bars. But when you kill 4 innocent young people in the prime of their life while they're sleeping, and you know, as you are now a mass murderer at this point, there's very little room here for mercy. And I'm not sure if the people in Idaho would want him not to get the death penalty, because if you don't apply it to him, then who else would be more deserving than him? Because you have 4 young people. So he's sitting there with all the cards, all the power, and maybe he might offer it to Ann Taylor and Kohberger and say, look, you better think about this, because you know, I might make an offer to you, I might not, but we are all set to go 100%. So it's huge. It's really huge. And I think at this point, any plea bargaining, it's probably 99% sure that there's not going to be any plea bargaining. It could be mercifully in just case Bill Thompson wants to spare the families, but I don't think so. I think it's 99% sure this is going to go to trial and there's going to be no plea bargain.
I want to play this news clip, but I think you're right. The other thing, just to remind everyone, is that Bryan Kohberger is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But the other thing is that makes it particularly unpalatable for many people is that the death penalty in Idaho is a firing squad.
Right.
A lot of people that are anti-death penalty, that makes them even more anti-death penalty. They see that as cruel and unusual punishment. However, it's apparently legal in Idaho. So that is, if he does get convicted and he does get the death penalty in the penalty phase, that is his fate, a firing squad. So let me play this news clip here.
Case, including the 911 call from the surviving roommates and the death penalty. ABC's Kana Whitworth has the details.
A striking blow to the defense in the Idaho college murder case, as their most recent attempt to have the death penalty taken off the table is denied.
Mr. Kohberger sits here today. He's innocent, and it's up to the state to bring evidence.
Bryan Kohberger's defense team has argued that his autism spectrum disorder should preclude him from capital punishment. And this morning, the judge disagreeing, writing in part, no court has ever found ASD to be a categorically death disqualifying diagnosis. The judge also citing the defendant's IQ, which is in the 90th percentile for his age, and his 4.0 GPA when receiving his master's degree in criminal justice.
The judge has found because his diagnosis does not affect his intellectual capacity, he can still be subject to the death penalty.
Kohberger, whose defense team says is innocent, has been charged with the 2022 murders of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, and the latest filing from the judge providing new details about when Xana's body was discovered. The judge citing grand jury testimony from a surviving roommate stating that when her friends were called over the morning after the murders, one of them went to the second floor to grab a kitchen knife. When he came back out, the surviving roommate saw Xana again for a split second, and I just started bawling. The roommate testified that I thought maybe she was still just drunk and all asleep on the floor. And at 11:55, that surviving roommate is heard pleading with the 911 dispatcher.
This happened in our house. We don't know what.
Kohberger's defense had argued that call shouldn't be played during the trial, but this morning, the judge ruling most of it can be, along with the surviving roommates' texts to each other and their attempts to reach the victims.
The redaction that the judge is going to do to ensure that hearsay is excluded and redacted from what the jury hears, they will also make sure that it is complete enough for the jurors to understand the portions that are left.
The judge also allowing prosecutors to call several expert witnesses to the stand during trial, and that includes 2 members of the FBI to discuss cell phone records and a change in spending habits, as well as a supervisor at Amazon. Now, the next pre-trial hearing is on May 15th. Kana Whitworth, ABC News, Los Angeles.
So that's the report there. That so everything, and you notice the judge said no court has ever disallowed the death penalty because of an autism spectrum diagnosis. So obviously, as we said before, the judge is not biased. He's using case law to base his decision upon.
And Bill, Ann Taylor isn't completely precluded from raising the issue, but it will be. But if he's convicted, it will be raised by her in the second trial. And that second trial is a brief trial to determine what aggravating and mitigating circumstances exist. And this, at this point, the jury, which had already convicted him, will be reconvened and decide whether or not he should get the death penalty or life behind bars. So she could raise it, but she'll have to raise it after conviction, and she'll raise it as a mitigating circumstance to try and find some sympathy. Then remember, in it, the death penalty has to be unanimous. If she can just get one juror to even though the juror may have convicted, if she could get one juror to say, well, maybe there's something to that. Yeah, he's a really bright guy. It's never affected him. He's in a PhD program, but I just feel a little bit unease. If she could reach one juror, she will have spared his life. And so therefore it still may be used, but it'll be used much later in the mitigation and aggravating factor stage. So she could still use it, but it's going to be very limited.
You know, Mike, just explain to me here. Here you got autism spectrum disorder. How does that preclude someone that has that disorder from committing a quadruple murder? So I'm not understanding the defense, using that as a defense, as an excuse for him to, or is it just it's an excuse to not give him the death penalty?
Bill, it's she comes in late with this idea. The diagnosis occurs while he's sitting in jail, right before she raises the issue to Judge Hippler at this very, very late date. He didn't have a diagnosis of this, some sort of any sort of disorder that we know of when he was a little kid. Yeah, he may have not had a lot of friends. He may have been hard to get to know, but so what? That's his personality. It doesn't